How are you guys doing? Today is Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Chris Sale. Chris Sale, the elite starting pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, the ace of the Boston Red Sox, is turning 33 today, and what I'm going to do with this episode, I'm going to, of course, provide some insight in what he's been able to do from the beginning of his career to where he is now. He's one of the few players to actually say that he's played for the White Sox and the Red Sox. I think that's a pretty impressive feat in itself. Not to mention what he's been able to do as a pitcher. I don't think you understand how impactful of an individual pitcher Chris Sale is. He holds 3 MLB records at the moment. He has the best career strikeout to walk ratio, 5.33 strikeouts to walks. He's reached 2,000 strikeouts in the fewest amount of innings out of any MLB player to date. And of course, he has the most immaculate innings pitched. He has 3 of them, tied with Sandy Koufax and Max Scherzer. And the best way to describe an immaculate inning is 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out, 3 straight times, no balls, 9 pitches, 9 strikes, 3 strikeouts. He's done that 3 times in his life. So I think with that said, I think it's definitely worth looking into Chris Sale. Not to mention with what he's been going on with recently. After missing an entire season, he, of course, would come back from his Tommy John surgery and even coming back from a little bit of COVID to come back and at least make a slight bit of a return for the Boston Red Sox. Now, with the season around the corner, he looks as though he's going to get ready for this full season with the Boston Red Sox as he is under contract through 2024. So, coming right back to the beginning, coming out of Lakeland, Florida, I guess the best way to kind of really describe his game is that I guess he throws with a lot of power, obviously, but I guess the thing about his pitching that really defines his pitching is that he's very fearless, and he really does pitch with poise like he's really done it before. I do think that pitching is really kind of outsmarting your opponent just in the moment, and the fact that I think he does it so often and so consistently. Chris Sale is a pitcher that truly knows how to really exert and use his command to his advantage. So I get right into it. Coming out of Lakeland, Florida, Chris Sale would, of course, be taken right out of college after playing Florida Gulf Coast. After playing at Florida Gulf Coast, he would go on to be taken with the 13th overall selection out of the 2010 MLB draft. Looking at other players in that draft, Bryce Harper, the reigning National League MVP from the Phillies, was the number 1 draft by the Nationals out of high school, out of Southern Nevada. Manny Machado would be taken with the 3rd overall pick by the Baltimore Orioles out of high school, as he is now playing for the San Diego Padres. Drew Pomeranz, who would be a all-star pitcher for the Red Sox, would be taken with the 5th overall pick. Matt Harvey, who would be an all-star pitcher, would be taken by the New York Mets out of UNC. Yasmani Grandal would be the pick right before Chris Sale, the number 12th overall pick to the Cincinnati Reds out of Miami. Christian Yelich, who was a former MVP for the Milwaukee Brewers and their elite outfielder, was taken by the Florida Marlins with the 23rd pick out of high school out of LA. And even looking in the supplemental round, Noah Syndergaard was taken with the 38th pick by the Blue Jays out of high school. Nick Castellanos, who is now one of my elite outfielders, he was taken out of high school by the Detroit Tigers with the 44th overall pick, just to get a sense of who was taken with him in that draft. Even JT Realmuto was taken in the 3rd round of that draft, so he had a lot of talent that came out with him in that year. Chris Sale would, of course, make his actual debut in his age 21 season in 2010, the actual same year that he would be drafted, which is, of course, a very impressive feat in itself. He would go on to play 21 games, as he did not start a single one of them. He came on as a relief pitcher and at some points a closer for a Chicago White Sox team in 2010 that finished with an 88-74 record. They would finish with the 2nd best record in the American League Central. In this year, Mark Burley would win a Gold Glove, and Alexi Ramirez would win the Silver Slugger, the only player on the team to do so. In his very first season as a relief pitcher, Chris Sale would go on to pitch 23 innings in these 21 games. He finished with a 2-1 record. He had a 1.93 ERA, which to this day is the lowest ERA that Chris Sale has ever put together in a season that he's pitched in. And of course, he did wonders as a relief pitcher as he finished 8 games. He had 4 saves. He allowed 15 hits in the 23 games that he played, as he would go on to strike out 32, as he had 8 less hits than innings pitched, and he would have 9 more strikeouts than innings pitched as well. He would finish with an ERA plus of 2.25, which is 125 points better than the average ERA in baseball. So, of course, that's how Chris Sale would go on to make his introduction to the league, despite the fact that the White Sox did not make the playoffs. This would transition to his second year with the team. In his age 22 season with the White Sox in 2011, he would go on to play 58 games in a season where the Chicago White Sox finished with a 79-83 record. They finished with 9 less wins than the previous season, as Mark Buehrle would win the Gold Glove for the 3rd year in a row this season. Chris Sale will go on to finish with a 2-2 record as a relief pitcher, as he finished with a 2.79 ERA. He would finish 17 games as he finished with 8 saves on the year. That would be the most saves that Chris Sale would ever record in a season, in his very last season of being a sole relief pitcher. He would go on to pitch 71 innings over those 58 games. He allowed 52 hits, which is 19 less hits than innings pitched, and he would go on to strike out 8 batters, more than innings pitched, as he had 79 strikeouts on the year. This would be the 2nd year in a row he had more strikeouts than innings pitched, and he had more innings pitched than hits. Once that 2011 season came to an end, he, of course, would be named the starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. And, of course, you would expect most people's transition from relief to starting pitcher to be at least a bit of a rough one. Chris Sale's was not rough at all. His very first season as a starting pitcher was his age 23 season in 2012. He would go on to start 29 of the 30 games he pitched in a season where the White Sox would finish with an 85-77 record. They would finish with 6 more wins than the previous year, as they would go on to finish second in the division. This would be the 4th year in a row as a team, in the 3rd year in a row with Chris Sale, that the White Sox would fail to make the playoffs. Jake Peavy would win the Gold Glove. And, of course, just spoilers, the White Sox don't make the playoffs with Chris Sale. But still, within the season itself, Chris Sale would be named an All-Star in his very first season as a starting pitcher. He finished with a 17-8 record, as he finished with a 3.05 ERA, finishing with a 1.40 ERA plus, 40 points better than the average ERA of all pitchers in the American League. He would go on to throw 1 complete game that season. He would finish with 192 innings. The first time he even threw over 100 innings in a season. He would go on to kill it. In his very first season as a starting pitcher, he allowed 167 hits in those 192 games. That's 25 less hits than games played, as he had 192 strikeouts, as many strikeouts as he had innings pitched. So, I mean, this would be the 3rd year in a row that he would pretty much keep up that ratio of as many, if not more, strikeouts than innings pitched, and he had less hits than innings pitched for the 3rd year in a row for sure. In addition to being named an All-Star for the very first time in 2012, he would go on to finish 6th in Cy Young, as the Cy Young winner in 2012 would go on to be David Price for the Tampa Bay Rays, as that would be how that season would end for him. But, of course, his very first season as a starting pitcher, he was virtually he was an all-star. Very rare feat that you don't really see that often. But following his very first all-star season, he would come back for his age 24 season in Chicago. In 2013, Chris Sale would start all 30 of the games he played in a season where the White Sox would go on to finish with a 63-99 record. They would go on to finish with the worst record in the AL Central, as they had won 22 less games than the prior season. Chris Sale would go on to finish with an 11-14 record, the only time he would finish with a losing record in his years with the Chicago White Sox. He did all this while finishing with a 3.07 ERA. He did all this while pitching 214 innings, the first time he eclipsed 200 innings. He would throw 4 complete games leading the American League. Despite his losing record, he would go on to be named an All-Star, as he would go on to be named 5th in Cy Young voting. Taking a look at how the awards went that year, the Cy Young actually went to Max Scherzer that year in Detroit. But looking at how he fared in these 214 innings, he allowed 184 hits, which is 30 less hits than innings innings pitched. He would finish with 226 strikeouts, the first time he would eclipse 200. This would be the third time in his first 4 seasons that he would have more strikeouts than innings pitched. And in his first 4 years, he would not have less strikeouts than innings pitched at all. He would finish with a 1.37 ERA plus to get a sense of how well he was pitching in that sense. And he would go on to finish with at least 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, of course. That's what that ratio was looking like. And of course, once this season came to an end, even though the White Sox didn't make it, he was, of course, by that point, he was the ace for the Chicago White Sox organization moving forward. And by this time, he was a 2-time All-Star, proving that his first All-Star wasn't a fluke. Transitioning to his 5th season with the Chicago White Sox and his 3rd season as a starter, Chris Sale would go on to start all 26 of the games he played in his age 25 season in 2014. He finished with a 12-4 record in a season where the White Sox finished with a 73-89 record. They had the 4th best record in the American League Central, as they had 10 more wins in the prior season. This is the season where Jose Abreu would win the Silver Slugger and the Rookie of the Year. Also, this is the year where Alexi Ramirez would go on to win his last Silver Slugger with the Chicago White Sox. In this 2014 season, Chris Sale would finish with a 12-4 record. That would be his best win-loss percentage that he would have while being a pitcher for the White Sox. He would finish with a 2.17 ERA. This would be the 3rd time in his first 5 years that his ERA was below 3. However, this is the first time he had done so while being a starting pitcher. He would go on to throw 2 complete games, as he would throw for 174 innings, his least amount of innings that he would pitch as a starter in Chicago. In the 174 innings, he would allow 129 hits, which is 45 less hits than innings pitched. He would strike out 208 batters, which is 34 more strikeouts than innings pitched. That would be the 4th year in a row he had more strikeouts than innings pitched and more innings pitched than hits. He, of course, and this would be the 5th year in a row that he would go on to finish with less hits than innings pitched. He would go on to finish with at least 200 strikeouts for the 2nd year in a row, as of course that's a very incredible feat to hit. He would lead the American League, however, in ERA plus that year at 173, meaning, it was the best compared to every single pitcher in the American League. He would also lead the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings, and that ratio would be 10.8. It wouldn't be his highest. It would be the 2nd highest of his career to his rookie season when he was a relief pitcher. This is the highest that he would put, at least at that point, as a starting pitcher. Once the season came to an end, even though the White Sox missed the playoffs and Chris Sale would be named to his 3rd All-Star game, he would be named 3rd in Cy Young voting in 2014, as he missed out, losing to Corey Kluber and Felix Hernandez. Kluber playing for the Indians and Felix Hernandez playing for the Mariners at that time. But that would be his 3rd All-Star season. Following that year, Chris Sale would return for his 6th season with the team. In his age 26 season in 2015, he would go on to start all 31 of the games he played in a season where the White Sox finished with a 76-86 record. They finished with 3 more wins in the prior season, but they still had the 4th best record in the American League Central. In that season, Chris Sale would go on to finish with a 13-11 record, finishing with a winning record as a starting pitcher for the 3rd time in his first 4 years while doing so. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the 4th year in a row as a starting pitcher, which is definitely not an easy feat to do. And he would go on to finish 4th in Cy Young this season, as the winner for the Cy Young in 2015 in the American League was Dallas Keuchel for the Houston Astros. But in this season where Chris Sale went 13-11, he would go on to finish with a 3.41 ERA, which at that point would be the highest ERA that Chris Sale had posted as a starting pitcher. He would go on to throw for 208 innings, the 2nd time in his 6-year career that he had thrown at least 200 innings. In those 208 innings, he allowed 185 hits. That's 23 less hits than innings pitched. He would finish with an American League high 274 strikeouts. That's 66 more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the 3rd year in a row he would eclipse 200 strikeouts. And this would be, of course, the first time he eclipsed that would be the first time he led the American League in that stat. He also led the American League in times he would hit batters. He finished with 13 pitches that he would hit batters with. His ERA plus for the year was 1.14. He had a FIP, fielding independent pitching, of 273, which led the American League for the first time. He would go on to lead the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings for the second year in a row at 11.8, which would be the second highest in his career at that point. He would also lead the American League in strikeouts per walk for the only time in his MLB career. He would go on to finish with a 6.52, as even looking at it contributes to his career high strikeouts per walk for his career. But still, that is how he would finish that season. And once that season came to a close, the White Sox completely missed the playoffs. But of course, Chris Sale was continuing to show and even continuing to get better and show why he was one of the best players, why winning 4 All-Stars in a row for him was nothing to him at that point. And then looking at his 7th season in Chicago, his 5th full season as a starter, Chris Sale would go on to start all 32 of the games he played in a season where the White Sox finished with a 78-84 record as a team. They won 2 more games in their last season. In their final season, in his final season with the team, in his 5th season as a starter, he was named as an All-Star for the 5th year in a row, as he was named 5th in the Cy Young race, as the winner this year would be Rick Porcello for the Boston Red Sox. Chris Sale would go on to finish with a 17-10 record. This would be the 4th time he had a winning record as a starting pitcher, and the 5th time he's had a winning record as a pitcher in his 7 seasons with the Chicago White Sox. He would finish with a 3.34 ERA. As he finished with 6 complete games, he would lead the American League, and that would be his career high. He has not pitched 6 complete games since his last season in Chicago. He would throw for 226 innings, which is the most innings that he's ever pitched. This would be the 3rd season in a 4-year stretch that he would throw for at least 200. He would finish with 190 hits allowed in those 226 innings, which is 36 more innings pitched than hits. He would also finish with 233 strikeouts, which is 7 more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would make it the 6th season in 7 that he would have more strikeouts than innings pitched than hits. And there was not a single season, at least up until that point, where he had less strikeouts than innings pitched. He would lead the American League in times he hit a batter with a pitch, as he had 17 hit by pitch or HBPs. This would be the most that he would ever put together in a season as well. But of course, as the season came to an end, at the end of his 7 seasons, Chris Sale was a 5-time All-Star in all 5 seasons that he has started for the White Sox. Yet the White Sox had not made the playoffs. Following his 7 seasons with the Chicago White Sox, he would get traded to the Boston Red Sox for Yoan Moncada, Michael Kopech, Luis Alexander Basabe, and Victor Diaz. Out of which Yoan Moncada would end up being a prime contributor for the Chicago White Sox as of right now. After Tim Wakefield got his jersey retired, he would go on to get his number changed once he moved to the Boston Red Sox. And once he got to the Red Sox, he would go on to start his very first season there in his age 28 season in 2017. In his age 28 season, Chris Sale would go on to start all 32 of the games he played in a season where the Red Sox finished with a 93-69 record. They finished with the exact same record they had the year before when Rick Porcello was the Cy Young winner. And they would go on to, like they said, they had the same amount of wins as they had the year before. In Chris Sale's very first year as the starting pitcher for the Red Sox, he would go on to be named an All-Star for the 6th year in a row, as this year he would get the very closest that he would ever get to winning a Cy Young. He would go on to finish as the runner-up in the award to Corey Kluber, who won it for Cleveland that year. He would go on to be named, he was 9th in the MVP race as well, as that was the highest he would finish in the MVP race. Jose Altuve would win the MVP this year. In his very first season with Boston, Chris Sale would go on to finish with a 17-8 record. This would be his 5th time that he had a winning record in his 6 seasons as a starting pitcher. He would finish with a 2.90 ERA. This would be the 2nd time in his 6 seasons as a starting pitcher that he would finish with an ERA below 3 while pitching at least 170 or so innings. He did all this while leading the American League in innings pitched. This is the only time that Chris Sale has led the league in pitching in 2017. He would go on to finish with 165 hits allowed in those 214 games, which is virtually 49 less hits than innings pitched. He, of course, would go on to finish with 308 strikeouts in those 214 innings. That's 94 more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the second time he's led the American League in strikeouts. It's a career high for him. It's the only time he's pitched 300 strikeouts in a season. And of course, to this date, he has not led the American League in strikeouts since 2017, his very first season with the team. He would go on to finish with a fielding independent pitching number of 245, the second time that he would lead the American League in that statistical category. And he would lead the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings, as he had 12 per 9, the third time in a 4-season stretch that he would do so. He has not led the American League in strikeouts per 9 innings since 2017, but his next 2 seasons he'd actually have better numbers in those statistical categories. Once his very first season in Boston came to an end, he would go on to lead them into the ALDS, but in the ALDS, they would lose to the eventual World Series champs, the Houston Astros, but that would be his very first touch of the playoffs. This would transition into his second full season with Boston in his very last All-Star season to date. In his age 29 season in 2018, Chris Sale would go on to start all 27 of the games he played in a season where the Red Sox would finish with an 108-54 record. This is the season where Mookie Betts would go on to win the MVP for the Boston Red Sox, and Chris Sale was actually dealing with a little bit of shoulder stuff, but he was still able to finish with a 12-4 record in the meantime. This would be the 6th time and the 5th year in a row that he finished with a winning record as a starting pitcher. He would finish with a 2.11 ERA, which would be the lowest ERA that he would post in his career as a starting pitcher. This would, of course, be the 2nd year in a row and the 3rd time in a 5-year stretch that he would finish with an ERA below 3. The 2nd year in a row, 2 for 2 in his seasons with the Red Sox at that point. He would pitch 158 innings at that point, which would be the lowest amount of innings that he would pitch as a starter up until that season. However, he only allowed 102 hits in those 158 innings, which is 56 less hits than innings pitched. He would go on to throw out 237 strikeouts in those 158 innings. Even just doing the math right here, it's a little tough, but that's 79 more strikeouts than innings pitched. And this would, of course, be yet another season and the 9th season that he would have he would not have less strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the 8th season he had more strikeouts than innings pitched. This would be the 9th season in a row that he had less hits than innings pitched, virtually keeping up an incredible streak that he had going. Once the season came to an end, of course, he would be named an All-Star for the 7th year in a row. He has not been named an All-Star since 2018. He would go on to finish 4th in Cy Young voting for the year, as the Cy Young that year went to Blake Snell for the Tampa Bay Rays. But following his last All-Star season to date, he would lead the Red Sox into the playoffs. In their first round, they would go on to beat the Yankees 3-1 in that very first round. As even within this round itself, he would go on to win the game. In the 6 innings he pitched, he would go on to only allow 2 runs, striking out 9 batters. In the second round, they would go on to beat the Houston Astros, who had won the World Series the year before and had knocked them out. They won 4-1 in the ALCS. As within that specific series, Chris Sale would go on to pitch 4 innings. He allowed a couple of runs, struck out 5. But then the Red Sox would go on to the World Series, where they would beat the Los Angeles Dodgers in 5. They won it in 5. This would be where Steve Pearce would win the World Series MVP. But even in this World Series, in his only World Series appearance, Chris Sale would go on to pitch 5 innings. He would allow only 3 runs and strike out 10 batters in those innings, as he would go on to be a big part of the reason why the Red Sox would win the World Series, as his game would eventually result in the win for the Red Sox that day. So that would be good for them to win the series. And of course, following that up, Chris Sale would leave that season, of course, as a 7-time All-Star, being named a 7-time All-Star in a row, and of course, an official champion. And of course, ever since then, it's been a little bit rocky, but I think that after we've reached the end of that valley, and he's definitely on the way back up. But of course, it would start with his very next season. His 3rd season in Boston would be his age 30 season in 2019. In that season, he would start all 25 of the games he played in a season where the Red Sox finished with an 84-78 record. They would win 24 less games than they had the prior season, as even this year, he would go on to deal with a little bit of elbow inflammation. But in 2019, he would go on to record the 2,000th strikeout in his career while crossing that 2,000 strikeout threshold and signing that 5-year, $145 million deal extension. Chris Sale would go on to finish with a 6-11 ERA, the first time he had a losing record since his second All-Star season with the White Sox back in 2013. He would go on to finish with a 4.40 ERA, the only time in his career he would finish with an ERA above 4. This would be, of course, his career worst. In the 147 innings he pitched, he would allow 123 hits, which is actually 24 less hits than innings pitched, as he finished with 218 strikeouts. Looking at how that would finish, that would be 71 more strikeouts than innings pitched, as he was still able to keep that ratio under wraps. This would be the 10th year in a row that he had less hits than innings pitched. In the 9th year in a row, he had more strikeout, or the 9th year in that 10-year stretch that he had more strikeouts than innings pitched. He would go on to finish that season with an ERA plus of only 1.10, meaning it was 10 points better than the average American League pitcher that season. But once this 2019 season came to a close, with Chris Sale not making the All-Star team, ending his streak at 7, the Boston Red Sox, of course, would fail to make the playoffs. And then following that, going into the 2020 season, that was, of course, impacted by everyone for COVID. It would be announced that Chris Sale would undergo Tommy John surgery, so he would completely miss the season. That would see the Boston Red Sox miss the playoffs even in a shortened season, as they finished with the worst record in their division. However, this would lead into this last season that he played, the 2021 season. He, of course, would be placed on the injured list to start the season as he was recovering from Tommy John. He, of course, would go on to have a mild case of COVID, and of course he would have to get benched with COVID tests, and he was still coming back from injury a little bit, but he would of course make his return late in the season, all the way in September, as in his age 32 season, his fourth season starting with Boston and his fifth year with the organization. Chris Sale would go on to start all 9 of the games he played in a season where the Red Sox finished with a 92-70 record. They would go on to finish with the second best record in the AL East, as they would qualify for the wild card game. In that season, Sale would go on to finish with a 5-1 record, of course getting himself right back up to a winning record, his third winning record in his first 4 seasons with the Red Sox. He would finish with a 3.16 ERA. In the 42 innings he pitched, he allowed 45 hits. This would be the very first time in his 11 seasons of pitching that he would have more hits allowed than innings that he pitched. He had 52 more strikeouts than innings pitched, so of course this would be the 10th time in his career that he had more strikeouts than innings pitched on the year. And just considering Chris Sale's strikeout pattern, how prolific he is as a strikeout artist, it really makes sense. But he would, of course, come back late, as the Red Sox needed a late push to make it into the playoffs. Once they made it into the playoffs, they would end up beating the Yankees in the American League Wild Card Series, as they would go on to win that game. They would go on to face off against the Tampa Bay Rays in the very first round of the American League Division Series. They lost that series in 4. And then they would go on to face off against the Astros in the American League Championship Series. The Red Sox would lose in the American League Championship Series to the Astros in 6, as the Astros went on to the World Series to lose in 6 to the Atlanta Braves. So, of course, that's how that season ended. And with the 2022 season literally starting next week, that is how we lead into this next season, as Chris Sale is a pitcher that has not made the All-Star team since 2018. But considering the player that he was before his series of injuries, and considering he's literally shown flashes of that at the end of the season, I have no reason in my mind to doubt that Chris Sale is still one of the most elite pitchers in baseball. And once he finds his rhythm, once he finds his groove, he's going to be a problem for the American League once again. And of course, with that said, Once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Thursday, March 31st for another episode to review everything that happened today. And of course, by this time next year, if Chris Sale is still on the list, I will, of course, fill everyone in on what he's been able to do, including what he's been able to do in this most recent season. That's probably one of the better things about his birthday being in the off season. With that said, I do want to thank everyone for listening to this piece, listening to all 30 minutes. I do want to wish Chris Sale a happy 33rd birthday, and if you ever get a chance, I would recommend watching Chris Sale. He wears number 41 for the Boston Red Sox, and he is a prolific strikeout artist. Let any Yankee fan tell you. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. And thanks for listening to my piece. Peace out.